Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everybody. It's a tough ask that the compare has put to us to energize the entire audience after lunch, but we hope to come up close to the bar. We've got an extremely eminent panel here with presence across, I would say, a regulatory body, some of the oil marketing companies from a PSU standpoint, and even from the private pipeline side. So really look forward to an engaging discussion. I think the previous session was talking about energy transition. We have sessions on city gas, refineries, and etc. But in all of this oil and gas value chain, sometimes we forget, as the topic says, connecting the dots. Right? It's a key logistics, and I think more than logistics, it's a mainstay of how some of the growth that is expected to happen in the sector is really going to happen. And there are plays not just for oil and gas, which is what this conference is about, but also for new energy, what some of the past session talked about. But we'll come to that. What I will then request is, and we'll probably maybe start from you, Mr. Goyal, on that side, with your opening statements, right? And I think we were having a fairly engaging discussion during lunch as well on what will it really take for growth in the pipeline sector, right? There are projects BPCL is doing, I think Bina expansion, potentially maybe some more pipelines coming along the lines of that. There is enough and more. There is product pipeline. I don't think there is anybody on gas pipeline here, but GAIL has significant gas pipelines. Of course, sorry, Akhil is there from the gas side. But what do you think are some of the achievements so far? Because we've come a long way. We do have a fairly large both gas grid and even a product pipeline. I would not say grid, but a good network of 24,000 odd kilometers. And I think BPCL has some 4,000 kilometers. Yeah, 3,500. So if you could talk about that journey and maybe touch a little bit upon the challenges and what really can be done to take the growth forward.
Thank you, Ms. Manas. So I would like to share the long journey which Indian industry and especially the BPCL has undertaken so far in building up this pipeline infrastructure, which is so very critical for the entire industry. Today, BPCL has about 3,500 kilometers of product pipeline, out of which about 1,937 odd kilometers is crude pipeline. There is a small pipeline for LPG. Apart from that, we are also now laying huge gas pipeline infrastructure in CGDs. So we have almost 25 GAs with us. So more than almost 8,000 kilometers of steel pipeline, and apart from that, MDB pipeline network is being done. Apart from that, we are also joining hands, and we have.
Well, if you could just
Hello.
yes.
Yeah, we have number of JVs undertaking pipelines for us, whether it is LPG line or whether it is our joint ventures for CGD network. So overall on India, we already, as you discussed, we have more than 24,000 kilometers of product pipeline. We have almost more than, now national grid is almost complete for gas pipeline, and 298 odd GAs have already been allocated or authorized. Round 12th is now around the corner, and people are in the process of bidding. So now I would say that it is time for us to use the network, national grid of the gas, by developing the GAs. And as far as POL is concerned, we have scope to further lay the network. As BPCL, we are already laying about 4 or 5 main POL lines. One is from Krishnapatnam to Hyderabad, that's about 450 odd kilometer multi-product pipeline we are laying. We are laying from Irugur, that is Coimbatore, to the Devangonti, Bangalore. Coimbatore, Bangalore, about 350 odd, again multi-product pipeline. We are connecting our our Mumbai refinery, which is having a space constraint. So we are connecting another line from there and taking it to Rasaini for its further expansion, which will facilitate expansion of Mumbai refinery. We are also laying small ATF lines for new Jewar airport and even in Hyderabad. We are also expanding, as you rightly said, Bina refinery, for which now we will be augmenting our crude pipeline from Jamnawadina to Bina. So that way, BPCL is expanding and investing heavily on pipeline. We are already on the ground for all the 4 lines, and next 2 years will be a busy period for the pipeliners in BPCL.
Great. No, thank you, Mr. Pradeep, on that. Akhil, coming to you, in a sense, PIL is the new kid on the block, right, so to speak. Though, of course, what used to be early East-West gas pipeline. I mean, it's a huge endeavor. I mean, in terms of when it was built, even now, 48-inch gas pipeline, bi-directional, and of course now with Brookfield taking up, which was earlier Reliance. What is from a private perspective? I mean, of course, laying the pipeline, but I'm pretty sure you will have some growth plans. And again, we were having that similar discussion of the monetization, etc. What has been the private perspective on pipelines, and what more really can be done to, secure the growth for that?
Okay, thank you, Manas. And look, from a private perspective, first thing for a gas pipeline industry as such, we still need, I think, at least 30, 40,000 kilometers or more pipeline in India. That will help us to connect all parts of India for gas, which currently is dominated by, I'll say, west and north. A lot of work is being done in south now. So that is one. So what can be done? Currently, if you see, uh, the risk reward for a pipeline developer is actually against the developer. And why I say that, unlike power sector where all of you and many of us come from, the volume risk in a pipeline business is with the developer. So that's the first part. Second problem which happened, and I'm not blaming the regulators or the governments here, industry is to equally blame, the bidding mechanism. The bidding mechanism was tariff based. And if you see, industry went out to bid very low tariffs, which even didn't cover the OPEX. And hence, most of these pipelines, I think 7,000 kilometers, is lingering on for years. And I don't think that will come. So what is required is one, a more comprehensive plan to say, okay, what balance regions of India need to be connected with a gas grid to potentially bring a new bidding mechanism which is based on lowest capex or based on no delays and penalties are there for not laying the pipeline, as well as in case of non-viable areas have a VGF, viability gap funding, which government of India has given to GAIL in some certain sectors, which is the right thing to do. Third part, which is the most important, is the risk of laying the pipeline. Now, we all know that getting right of use is the biggest hurdle in the country. So ministry and regulators can learn from other sectors, and we were discussing that during lunchtime, that why not take an NHI model where the government decides first or regulator decides first what is the path from A to B. The gas pipeline needs to be laid, take the RU and then go for bidding. And then multiple private investors, including the public sector, will be very happy to pour in billions of dollars, I can say, which is waiting on the sidelines. Once this happens, you will see exponential increase in the development of gas pipeline, and that will help the vision of Government of India to move gas from, say, current 6% to 15%. Now, my view is, obviously, I don't think it'll go to 15, but it'll definitely go to double digit, like 10, 11%. So all these things need to be done to clear the hurdles for more investments to come in. It's not that nothing has been done. A lot has been done by the government and ministries. We have come out with a unified tariff mechanism, which has helped to have one tariff across the country, which has helped customers which are far off from the sources. So that is helping reduce the cost of transportation for customers which could not afford it earlier. So multiple such mechanisms are in place. However, we need to do a little more to attract some billions of dollars which are sitting on the sidelines in India to come in, including in the gas pipeline sector.
No, I think very well said. So it's almost like, what in PE terms we say dry gunpowder, right? There is enough and more funding out there. We just need to create the right ecosystem, as you rightly said. So tariff goes a long way towards that. But of course, other enablers as well as the right financing models to recover and monetize. Coming to you, Mr. Senthil Kumar, from IOC standpoint, this significant product pipeline. In fact, you have close to 18, 19,000. So pretty much one would say the big daddy of product pipelines in Indian context. But that has come at significant investment from your side and not without challenges, right? So, I mean, what have been some of the learnings in this growth? And you also have further expansion plans. So how do you see that network and infrastructure changing and growing?
Thank you. I'll begin with the topic. You said connecting the dots. As you know, Indian Oil has been in the pipeline business for more than 60 years, and most of our pipelines are more than 25 years old. So we really began by connecting the dots. The bigger dots were the refineries, the smaller ones were the consumption centers. And as you said, we are close to touching 20,000 kilometers of pipelines. Now, in the gas, we began our journey compared to others a bit late, but we are present in 29 GAs. And we have even set up 2 LNG centers. We have a capex for the next year in excess of 4,000 crores, and we have roadmaps to extend to 25,000 and then to 30,000 kilometers. Now, what drives growth in this segment? It's like the whether you put the horse before the cart or the other way. Now, infrastructure, as the speakers before me said, in oil and gas, the capex is huge, and we need to be very careful of the volumes that we are talking about. The demand forecast has to be perfect. And in the gas segment, we have almost covered the southern states with the ETB and TPL pipeline. So that's from our NOR storage capacity of 5 million metric ton. We have commissioned up to Tuticorin. We are supplying SPIC. Now, this will cater to both APM gas that we have found in South Tamil Nadu, plus the storage facility will give operators the flexibility to even import gas. We have plans to extend it to Nellore from Ennore, and it's connecting to Bangalore to the Gales network. That is the biggest foray as far as the pipeline network of gas of Indian Oil is concerned, the south of India. In the northeast, we are part of the NEGG. It's very ambitious. And this is as per the government's idea of making energy equitably available to everybody in India. Of course, as the previous speaker had said, this was under VGF. Now, talking about the challenges in laying a pipeline, I fully agree. ROE, unlike most countries where you have utility corridors, that is a big problem of acquiring and problem of maintaining. Now, consider a case where the government itself gives you an utility corridor, then collectively we end up spending less on security. The threats are few. But in our case, at some places we have, on the same route, we have different operators laying pipelines in different ROUs. So that is a higher outgo on account of security. Now, the challenges for old pipelines, we are mitigating with a lot of intervention on advanced coating technology, monitoring. And in the newer ones, we are already incorporating methods so that the life is extended. We are also going in a big way to protect our pipelines with intrusion detection systems. We have invested more than 100 crores, and we are planning to invest roughly 350 crores in protecting all our pipelines through pipeline intrusion detection systems. And in gas, yes, the PNG is a big challenge for 2 reasons. One is we need to have a certain density of population for the PNG network to make sense, number one. And number two, the other challenge that we probably have been missing till now is ideally PNG will be replacing the LPG customers. So that also has to be tackled. We are moving from one business model to the other. That also will be a challenge. But I can assure you that we have plans and we are fully geared up to making energy equitable to everybody. And we have designs to connect all the dots in gas when the segment goes from the present 6.7% to 15%. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Coming to you, Mr. Arun, again, your broad thoughts on the pipeline landscape. Of course, you come from the Oil Industry Safety Directorate, but as growth happens, safety, of course, is important because not only in building it, but also maintaining it, right? I think Mr. Kumar talked about intrusion detection, but how do you balance that growth and safety? I mean, it's not either or, it's and. So, I mean, how do you?
Pipeline is one area which is expanding at a very fast rate. We all understand that. Before that, let me just clear because Manas referred OISD as a regulator. See, it's a very unique organization. At the same time, we are regulators for some sector, we are non-regulators for some sector. For offshore, we are actually a regulator, but for all other areas, including pipeline, refineries, we are a technical directorate of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas created in 1986 with the objective to enhance safety in oil and gas sector. And since then, OISD is working on developing standards. Currently, we have 118 standards, and 7 of them are specifically for pipeline, all kinds of pipelines. And then we carry out external safety audits, we carry out accident investigations, and we conduct lot many seminars, trainings, workshops for creating awareness among the industry. Coming back to the pipeline, see currently as per data, it's 58,000 plus pipeline, kilometer of pipeline in India, which is operative. We have to add some 20,000 odd pipeline from flow lines and feeder lines of upstream companies, which is not in this data. The way it is expanding, we are going to cross 1 lakh kilometer very shortly, maybe in a span of next 2 to 3 years. So that makes it actually one of the medium which is now going throughout the length and breadth. Again, pipeline is supposed to be the safest mean of transportation among all. If I go back to my data at OISD for a major accident, pipeline accident accounts to around 6.7% of the total accidents. Majorly, it is more from refinery or E&P sector. So that way, for a major perspective, I think last major accident happened in the Gale pipeline in Tatipaka in 2014, where 21 persons got killed. After that, incidents have happened, but casualties were not there directly from per se pipeline rupture. There have been few fatalities in the station's point of view, which is more of an installation level. So if I see, once we say it is the safest mean, from safety point of view, but again there is a big potential from a leakage point of view. Nowadays environment has become very, very sensitive. Some few days back, there was a cyclone, Mishang, and there was lot of flooding in Chennai. And out of that flooding, even oil from the drains of one of our refinery, it went out. And again, there's lot of news on that particular thing. We have seen accidents happening. We have seen big leakages happening. Currently, the CPCB is in the process of making some SOP for reporting of pipeline leakage. Currently, there is no specified quantity in that. So that also a work in progress. So the industry as such is developing some new technologies like pits and other things. Our standards are also OISD standard, are under revision, 5 of them, and 2 of them have already crossed a public consultation part. Today morning, actually, we were just reviewing one of our standard on LPG pipeline. So many new requirements we have tried to bring within that ambit, whereas the intelligent pigging, the durations, whether it is about the leak detection system or the PIDs and other technologies. So that's we are trying to imbibe in our standard as well to the extent feasible. So we are working with industry, with our audits and with our standards. We are trying so that the pipeline remains safe, and that's the motto we are working with industry.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you. Now, coming to a little bit more of a controversial topic, Mr. Pradeep, what I think we were discussing, India has a very different setup. I mean, there is a lot of PSU structure in terms of both the gas infrastructure as well as the product pipeline that is there. Regulator is there, and it's a helping hand to that extent, but some more helping elements could happen. If you look at globally, where many of these pipeline operations are actually done by another party, not necessarily the refinery or necessarily the marketing company, how do you see that? If I were to use the dreaded P word of privatization or unbundling, is it a good or a bad thing? I mean, again, maybe get the India perspective from you, and maybe Akhil, I will kind of get the global perspective from you. How do you see that, and what does it mean for the Indian pipeline industry?
See, Manas, as we were discussing during the lunch, now let's look at it in two parts. One is from the gas supply point of view, and another is from multi-product pipeline and for fuel products. The way I look at it, I have worked in both sides on the gas system as well as in the fuel side. Gas, it is perfectly workable, and only thing, as you had earlier shared, that unbundling is required from that side. If that happens, it will ease out, and it is a single product moving at a constant pressure in the closed network loop. It is possible and easily doable there. But when it comes to our petroleum pipelines, which are there in the country, they have been designed and built over last 60 years, as Mr. Senthil also shared. They were designed specifically for dedicated use, either for product evacuation from a particular refinery or for particular feeding a particular market. So their design, conceptualization, everything has been done based on that. It is not that it is not feasible for new pipelines. Certainly, they can be designed. You can have producers at one place, you can have dispatch terminals at another place, and you can have connecting pipelines which can operate on long-term contract basis. But that will be only on a, to me, feasible for a prospective basis. Existing refineries, if you want to try it out, unbundling dispatch areas and taking out separately, giving it to third party, to me, it looks almost difficult, because the rare example of that is we have had ever since PNG-RB came into existence since 2008. Most of the pipelines have been built on common carrier basis. Hardly any line has been used on a common carrier basis in spite of making it. So we need to really look at why they have not been able to use. Rather, the lines have been built with 25% capacity for a common carrier, which has remained unused till today. So the other side of that story is that honestly investment has gone in. So there is a need to look at it only for future perspective pipelines, that yes, they can be designed that way.
Sure. No, I think it's a very good, I would say, balanced hybrid approach that you've suggested, Mr. Goyal. And I think PNGRB is looking at some of these options because at the end of it, any asset, if it is laid, has to make economic sense, right? And Akhil, you can also talk about that. Some of it is regulatory regime driven, some of it is market structures. Pipeline companies are, for example, in US, you are allowed to invest in them. They are actually, investable assets. India also has InvITs, etc., coming in. But there are separate midstream companies, right? That liquidity does not exist in India to that extent. But to give the private perspective and some of this global, given your major investor is Brookfield, how can some of those best practices be brought in, where something like a hybrid like this can approach and give that comfort, where the Indian industry can get that additional support?
Okay, look, there are a few things. Structurally, if you see, and I'll talk more of gas pipeline, and we can talk of product also, but on a gas pipeline, the way competitiveness is brought in by US and Europe, and we can learn from them, is first they allow the pipelines to develop, start making some money, and then they start opening up. And that's where unbundling comes into picture. And what does unbundling bring in? Kind of unbundling brings in that kind of any customer can come and ask for open access, which is given without any issue, because the company is a pure transmission company. Now, it's not that it's not happening in India. GAIL and GSPL, who are bundled, they're still providing open access, but there is a chance that since they are also giving bundled products, sometimes they will not give that. So it's best to unbundle as we go along in the. But coming to your point also, that when we lay a pipeline, normally what is done in US, there's open seasons. What does open season means? That a demand is built up for a pipeline based on which the capacity is determined. Unfortunately, we've not done that in India. We have come out with certain designs of pipelines, which obviously, as you said, based on the regulatory requirement, 25% is surplus, which is getting underutilized. But again, that's what is past. But going forward, if you unbundle these pipelines, and time has come, we should do that. Each pipeline operator should act as a TSO in themselves. You don't need a central TSO also. And they can in a very transparent way declare on the websites what is capacity available. And we have now gas exchanges. You can even look at trading of capacities on the exchange. So some things can be happening. Other issue is obviously most of the pipelines in India are underutilized, including ours. So there are various other ways to look at it, and we can talk of that. One of them is why not start looking at blending hydrogen with these methane, and I think OSD and others are discussing that. Europe is much ahead of us in terms of it may take us still 5-6 years from now to do that, but I mean we start discussing. We as a company have tried to experiment with that. We've done some desktop study to increase utilization, but we need to do a lot of actual testing on ground to blend it. And obviously, the regulators, including OSD and PESO, will be involved in that to ensure that the utilization increasing. So one of the solutions is that, but definitely as a structural issue is concerned, we need to move towards unbundling and trying to attract more capital. Last point is, as far as you said, the investors like us, what will bring in more capital? I think we are in discussion with the government of India to say, okay, why not monetize more pipelines, which are viable, and a low-cost fund comes from outside India, where India needs a huge investment in infra, whether you talk of pipelines and other areas, for the next 1 or 2 decades to grow at 7 to 8%.
No, I mean, clearly the future is there, but making it work. And I think with that, Mr. Senthil, coming to you, you have a large capacity LPG, ATF, POL products, etc. that you have. And maybe coming to unbundling over time, but would even open access in product make really sense? Gas, it is technically there. Even POL, it is there because, again, as Mr. Goyal rightly highlighted, you're already building that common carrier capacity. There are very few dedicated carriers, except maybe those who are pre-PNGRB, etc., or you indicate as captive. You will have some which, I guess, from your ports and berths to refineries. But does open access really help? Because is it really enabling higher utilization? Is there really demand? I mean, how do we address that and still look toward a future where we can access some of the capital and create a separate pipeline ecosystem?
I'll take it one by one because there are 3-4 issues that are being discussed. As far as this bundling, unbundling, rebundling, in gas, I will not discuss. It is possible any day. Because gas is a business that came recently, and whatever capex right from the beginning, so this was possible always. Because most of the gas pipelines are all talking about imported gas. So the point of supply, anybody could supply. So that anyway, it started off with that concept that it could be a common carrier. Now coming to product, the first and foremost question to be asked is it going to add value to the customer? See, when I open up a pipeline and open access, if multiple people are going to use, is it going to benefit the customer? It is not, because whatever benefit the customer is already deriving. Now, question number 2, can we offer an open access and is it going to benefit anybody in an existing pipeline? See, as you rightly said, the dots are already in place. Okay. So in a multi-product pipeline, when you lay a pipeline, you have both the dots or a couple of more dots because from the supply point to the demand, it is set. Now, when you do not have multiple suppliers in a one dot, so there's no point in giving open access, and that is the reason why, like you rightly said, even after some of the pipelines were nominated as common carrier, but none of they were not takers. Obvious reasons. It doesn't make sense. And lastly, operationally, a multi-product pipeline has its own problems because when you pump different products in a pipeline, there has to be a set batch length to avoid interface. So that doesn't work out in product pipelines. And crude, as I said, crude has to be always dedicated. Now, there is often a comparison between US and Europe and India. In the West, now the rules were set before the game was started. There, the explorers were different companies, the private, and when the refiners came, they were different. Most of them were not in the exploration field. And lastly, the transporters, the pipeline operators, were almost always those entities who were not necessarily in either of the two. upstream, both refining and exploration. That is why, by birth, they were meant to cater to multiple operators, both on the supply side and on the demand side. So the last point is, what do we get out of monetizing? The first and foremost, even if somebody is willing to monetize, are there going to be any takers? Right? They rightly said any taker is going to want a fixed volume. Now the volume can only be offered by the operator who is operating the pipeline now. So that brings us to the question, the operator is going to monetize only when or if in the case that he is not going to be able to fund his capex. That is where we stand right now. Thank you.
No, fair enough, fair enough. And I mean, the Indian oil industry is doing well. Many of the players are doing well. So capex is not at a shortage per se. Utilization is good because, as you rightly said, the dots are already connected. The supply points and the demand centers. Unless at a forward-looking planning perspective, and there is more demand coming up, and you are seeing that in tier 2, and tier 2 is probably long is tier 3 and C class cities. That is where a lot of that. So that is where, and even city gas, which is what we call secondary coverage or tertiary actually, that is where potentially one could look at other pipeline operators. Other regulatory help, like a transport system operator, like we have the likes of Oposoco, etc., and Power, etc. But I don't know, maybe Mr. Arun, if you want to weigh in on this, I know this is a slightly monetization aspect, but if not, maybe just let me pivot. I mean, if you have any comment on this whole privatization unbundling, or I was going to pivot the question. So I'll pivot it. So I think the second question is, while we can debate, and I think just to conclude on that aspect, I think a kind of a middle ground, right, where we are saying what is existing, it has been laid with a certain purpose. Let us look at that. Forward-looking planning is very critical. Gas, much more easier so than product. I think that very segmented and structured approach could be a path forward. I think that's something we could lay as an action point from this panel. But coming back to you, Mr. Arun, as we talk about growth, one of the things was new energy, right? We are saying oil and gas pipeline, but why just oil and gas, right? Why not green hydrogen? Why not green ammonia? Why not green methanol? That also partly addresses the utilization question, but it's very easy to overgeneralize. I don't want to mix the two. But if these new energy forms come up, what are the norms that we would need? Because it's one easy to just say it in a setting here, but to actually make it happen, hydrogen is the lightest molecule. You cannot do it in the same steel pipe. So your thoughts?
Rightly said. Way forward, I think everyone is talking of hydrogen, maybe CBG also to the same breadth, and it's a reality now. So industry is also doing lot many things on hydrogen. Blending is already going on in few of the pipelines, maybe of the tune of 4 to 5% as a regulator approves. And the pipelines were not initially designed with respect to the hydrogen. Even there is a chance that in future we can see pure hydrogen pipeline as well in India itself. So a lot of things are going on in regulatory framework to handle that. In fact, pipelines are also aging. That is one of the concerns, as already Senthil ji said. As for the data, recently actually there was a parliamentary query on that, so I have collected the data. 23% of the pipelines of HPCL, BPCL and IOCL, they have crossed their design life of 25 years. And by the way, any guess what is the oldest age of pipeline which is in operation? It's 61 years. So that makes it a pretty difficult scenario where you have aging of pipelines, and then you have to tackle with the new fluids, whichever is coming up, whether it's hydrogen or CBG, they bring their own challenges. And in some places, even the crude has become even, the companies are purchasing more sour crude. So that also increases the challenge. OSD is also already working on two new standards, one on hydrogen, where we are trying to incorporate even up to the pipelines from manufacturing till pipeline. So that's work is going on. And another is compressed biogas. So these two areas, we have also initiated standards on that, and probably that will be useful for the industry to come.
Oh, thank you. I think it's good that OISD is kind of setting the stage, because increasingly, and coming to you, Mrs. Senthil, Indian Oil has significant green hydrogen plans. I mean, which is part of the broader decarbonization roadmap. And in fact, I would say your plans to become an energy major from an oil major. That is true for BPCL, IOCL, others as well, HPCL. But with these new energy molecules coming in, so to speak, right? What I mean, one is connecting the dots. There will be probably more dots because now there are different demand clusters and supply clusters actually, but even different molecules. Are you thinking ahead towards that? Are you working towards some of those things?
Yeah, we have plans to connect pipelines from the CBG plants for injection because the government has mandated that 5% injection should be there. So we already have plans. We have identified a few plants which are going to come up, and then we will be laying steel pipes to connect with the nearest CGD. So those plans are already there. We do have.
Anything different that you would have to focus on with these expansions? Because one is, of course, I mean, CBG is probably still the closest because at the end of it, it's eventually methane. But as you look to new products and molecules, right? I mean, there can be pure hydrogen pipelines.
The
with
pure
Germany.
hydrogen we are doing with Lancetech, we are doing one pilot project in Panipat. So that will give us some findings on which we'll work. So we are working towards that end too.
Sure. No, thank you. And in fact, one of the things I think you rightly highlighted, they are pilot projects into some extent. And I think maybe to start with, and given the consumption of some of these are a little distributed or decentralized, they might remain not necessarily a pipeline mode. We would love most energy to be pipeline because it's more efficient. But maybe to start with, it is, tankers and so on and so forth. Akhil, coming to you, and see, this is nascent everywhere. This whole new energy molecule. It's not that I can say US has done this much or Germany. There are some examples, but how do you see the future going forward for pipeline, and specifically again from a private perspective, because it opens up much more avenues for infrastructure coming up. Any thoughts that? Yeah.
In terms of new molecules, as I think a lot of discussion is happening on hydrogen, and we have hope that because, and I'm talking green hydrogen here, that's kind of you use solar to manufacture that, and that's sun is in abundance in India. So that's the mode we will go. Now, the path is not easy because the ecosystem requires a lot of changes. First is the cost of production of green hydrogen has to come down. Electrolyzers cost has to come down. Currently, the cost of green hydrogen production is $3.5 a kg. It should come down to $1. A lot of changes are required there. And then we talk of transportation. Now, transportation, it can be either you produce green hydrogen near the source, so it's consumed there, or you produce near the source of where solar is there, and you transport it either through grid or through pipelines or through tankers. Now, it's been proven across the world that possibly pipeline is the most safest as well as most, I'll say for a long distance transportation, most affordable. Now, whether you do it from 100% hydrogen pipelines that is being built, or we make a case for a blending of hydrogen to start with, because we have a lot of unutilized infrastructure lying in India. So these molecules will be used at. And you talked of other molecules like compressed biogas. Now that cannot be blended, brought into the transmission pipeline for two reasons. One, the quantity at one production center is low and the pressure is very low. So, but that can be blended with my city gas networks, which is the most viable mode, or directly sold as CNG kind of. That's being done in some cases. And I think some 1,000 stations are planned for producing compressed biogas through waste, basically. Again, there are a lot of challenges there. We can discuss that. But that blending would happen into straight away the CGD network. Hydrogen, yes, it has to happen in transmission network as we discussed. So all these landscape will evolve. It will take us 4-5 years from now to get more clarity, which includes the commerciality of that. End use cases being developed, as well as a lot of concern on safety, which I think OSD is already working on it. And once we address all this, I think this whole landscape will evolve.
No, thank you. And I think you're right. The challenges are very different, right? In one sense, the scale is also not there. Chemistry is a key thing for green hydrogen, etc. On the other hand, on CBG, there are operational aspects or volume aspects. It's fragmented, right? I mean, unless you have a certain critical mass, again, moving it makes it to be a challenge. Mr. Pradeep, again, BPCL is involved in these things. CBG, I think you're looking at green hydrogen in Bina. So how are you addressing the transportation aspects of this? Or you're saying we will still wait and watch? Is that still the policy, or you're moving ahead?
No, as far as BPCL is concerned, as you rightly said, we are looking at green hydrogen at Bina, where transportation issue is not there. Certainly, it will be produced and consumed there. As far as CBG is concerned, it is primarily getting mixed at the CGD level only. As of now, in one of our GA, it is local one CNG station properly being operated for CBG. So, on an industry basis, it is basically under trials and observation. What effects will it have on the metallurgy and the pipeline structures? 5% already, Indian Oil is the lead there. They've already tried out 5% hydrogen mixing and CVG mixing. Globally also the trials are on, and I think only time we'll have to wait and wait for the outcome of those trials, and then only future call can be taken.
Sure. No, makes sense. I mean, we are not talking about some small scale or some trivial commodity. These are volatile, flammable liquids. We are talking about hydrogen more so. Of course, it gets a little bit of the blame from some of those Zeppelin and Hindenburg disasters, not to use Hindenburg nowadays in this context. But anyways, but we are, time is up. What I would request is maybe very quickly closing statements from each of you in terms of if there was one ask, and Mr. Mittal, you're of course one of the regulators, but one ask you would have for the ecosystem and the regulator to change for this growth that we talked about. Same question.
Last year, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, they set up a working group. It was a 22 members working group to look into the entire gamut of the safety management system, the gaps in regulation, and way forward for a single regulator. The report has been submitted recently to the ministry, and it's under stakeholder consultation and resolution. Probably once that report is accepted, we can see lot many recommendations which are common to all the industry, and it's from the top management or from the safety culture to operational issues, even pipelines, and all those recommendations are there. So that will further help industry to improve upon the safety aspects, because as I said, every leakage, every small leakage is getting a headline, and lot of cases are going to even NGT, and the parliamentary queries what we are getting on pipeline, they are much more than in other areas. So the thing is, very small leakage may get a public attention. So that's become very important, and many times it's because of a pilferage, many times it's because of our own corrosion issues. So that needs to be taken care of. And then gaps in legislation also, it's required for the new ecosystem, whatever is coming up, hydrogen, CBG and other things. So it requires to have a proper ecosystem in place, and government is working on that.
No, I think that's a very important point. A single regulator. We talk about single window clearances, but oil and gas is fraught with multiple regulators. There is an upstream, there's a downstream, there's OESD, there is PESO, and we are talking about multiple new molecules. So you have multiple stakeholders and multiple, so it gets challenging. One ask and closing statement looking forward from your side, Mr. Senthil.
I do agree with that regulator issue. For me, as Indian Oil, having to operate some of the oldest pipeline, the first priority is to strengthen systems for safety and security, and to have a mechanism to assess the health. That will be topmost on my priority. And the second is, because we are going through a transition, and it is anybody's bet what would be the new form of energy, it is very, very important that we stick to timelines for completing projects. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good project management. As we build, we cannot afford to be delayed, because, I mean, there people say oil is dead or dying. I mean, there were differing views in COP28, and there was a bit of controversy there. But having said that, good project management is always critical. Akhil, over to you.
Okay, I'll just make one or two points. So first task, I think, is we need a more integrated approach. When I'm talking of new molecules, hydrogen is dealt by MNRE. So we need if we talk of all energy ministries, we need to come together, and that's where I think we need to decide which energy vector will have what share, kind of, right, and which direction India needs to go. That's one. Two, because we are investors, I'm saying we should push monetization, and I know the balance sheets of a lot of companies are good, but what about the balance sheet of Government of India, right? We should look at that if I'm the owner of a company. And third, what has been said is, I think oil and gas sector has been a little late to wake up on data and digitization and using a lot of technologies. I think now we are catching up, so this will help safety also, as well as help efficiently operating the older assets we have now. So we need to.
No, absolutely. But again, Akhil, very ambitious. So from single regulator to a single Ministry of Energy. But again, it's not a wrong ask, right? I think, especially as we look at new molecules, it is genuinely a single energy spectrum, right? It's not just oil and gas, just coal, because again, if you are transitioning or phasing down whichever, and renewables and so on and so forth. So coming to you, Mr. Pradeep, the closing statements and your asks that you would look for the future.
See, first, I think it's already come out. First and foremost, the need of the sector is to have single regulator and a single regulation. So that has already come. Second, from my perspective, is managing the ROE and safety of the pipeline as it is brought out. One part is managing the integrity and ensuring corrosion and all those kind of things. Second part is managing the external environment. Today in the country, we don't have regulation to manage and secure our ROU. How do I ensure third-party interventions into my pipeline system? So there are ways to investigate an incident of pipeline, but there is no way to actually check on the pilferages or the interruptions which happen on the ROU, or the ROU occupation happens. So there is a need to secure from the government side as ensuring that ROU remains safe and secure always.
No, I think that's a very critical. I mean, Mr. Senthil talked about project management, but I think there is equally an ask of multi-level governance, right? Local government, state government, central government. Sometimes there's a bit of, I would say a bit of passing the buck, etc. that happens, right? So, and I think that clearly is a key ask if you're looking for infrastructure growth. Thank you so much for this esteemed panel. A big round of applause.
Yeah, very good afternoon all. Myself is Dr. Jaya from BPCL R&D Center. I have a question that ethanol blending, blended MS, transportation in pipeline, or we are also talking of various other ethanol blend. So is there any regulation coming for the pipeline side? Because globally also myself has not found such a strong regulation. So what are the future things in India? I just want to understand. Many times we have given the ministry question answers. So I thought I should take the opportunity to ask these questions.
Is it from safety angle you are asking?
Corrosion angle as well as safety angle.
See-
And third thing is also I want to understand whether it is techno-economically feasible or not to think on this idea.
No, from safety angle, ethanol blending is already going on. 10 or 12% is already there, and target is to go up to 20%. And in future, it may further increase. Even aspirations are there where vehicles can run on ethanol itself. So we don't know, in Brazil it is happening. We can see in India also vehicles running on ethanol. So our standard is covering that. And I
I
don't.
am asking for its complete blend transportation in pipeline.
No, see, many places, many companies are doing blending at refinery, some are doing at depot. It depends on their own strategies. There is no fixed strategy in that. The leaders are here, they can tell, because they have also shifted. Some places they have done at refinery, and some places they have done at the depot itself. And from depot also, it is possible. So pipeline as such per se, up to what percentage we are doing, there is no issues envisaged till now, and we have not heard of any incident coming out of that. So pipeline is pretty safe. Our standard deals with it. Anything to add? You can add.
Indian Oil, we are pumping, we have done tests and we are actually pumping regularly ethanol blended MS from our Matra refinery. More than the regulator, we as very conscious operators, we have to be the first to see whether it has a potential to damage the pipeline or to affect, because basically it's a multi-product pipeline. So what will happen to the products that come after MS? That study you have to do. So we have done that over a period of year, and now it is regular. We are doing that. We are pumping.
Sir, my question is, I'm Rajiv Gupta from Underground Magnetics. And my question is to Mr. Arun Mittal. Sir, we are seeing that the pipeline infrastructure as an industry is growing at a faster pace. But there is a dire need for trained and qualified manpower at operations level. So is government working out to work out with some technical schools so that we can have the curriculum itself of pipeline in those polytechnics?
So already I think lot of initiatives have been taken, and in our working group, lot many recommendations are specifically for competency, the school and college levels. And as far as I understand, the ministry, one of the department is working on developing technician level educations. So that is already in progress in association with industry. So that's there that once anything is expanding at a faster pace, you will have a shortage of quality of manpower. But I think it is being handled in different ways. And after our recommendations are accepted, we can further go ahead on that.
Thank you so very much for that.